And I do feel like you bringing up values, that's where the shift happened to me, is when I identified my values, which are like the things that are most important to who I am and my being. I feel like it did kind of calm the search that I've been on since I was a child. Like, it really did kind of pause the unending, like,
pursuit.
Yeah. Of who am I? What do I need to be good at?
Yeah.
Welcome to Are We Happy Yet? A podcast that seeks to answer the age-old question, why are we all so damn unhappy no matter what we do? A far cry away from the latest self-help craze or wellness tips, on this podcast, we won't shy away from the hard but critical conversations about the true causes of our unhappiness epidemic.
Join us, Hannah Buzzo, licensed therapist, and Jane Thatcher Hahn, licensed clinical social worker, on our journey to understand what will truly, finally make us happy.
Let's go.
Well, today I'm so excited to have Audrey Bristol on the podcast. Audrey is a licensed clinical social worker and a therapist and a lovely person and good friend of mine. So I'm so happy that she's joining us. I met Audrey years ago. We both worked at Eating Recovery Center in Denver, which that experience is a podcast in and of itself. And reconnected a couple of years ago through a friend, Kaylee Elliott, who's also a guest on the podcast. And Audrey and I are colleagues and friends. We work in a consult group together. And Audrey is just an amazing therapist. I learned so much from her. And one thing I love about Audrey is I can always laugh with her no matter how serious the topic is. And that's something that's really, really important to me. So Audrey, we're so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate all the kind words. I'm so emotional already.
Choking up already.
It's so nice to hear those things. No, but thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, tell us a little bit more about you, your background, and how you arrived here today, a therapist and just a general awesome person.
Okay, I'll teach you about my awesomeness. It all started when I was born.
Your awesomeness.
No, I grew up in Dallas, Texas, in a very, very white privileged area, just the most privileged. It was really good. I got an amazing education. I have always struggled a lot with my identity. I went to a school that was like really good with you're a good student, or you're really a good athlete, or you're really good at art. And in those days, I just didn't really have a thing, you know? Mm-hmm. And I always wanted a thing. So I tried every sport. I tried every little, activity you could do. I was horrible at all of them. Probably because I just didn't stick with them. And I wasn't really motivated to be good at them. But I got into high school and I found God. And I got really involved with the church for a little bit and had a great time. I was lucky to have actually a very good experience in church. I went to a really cool one with really cool pastors, and just it was fun. It was youth group on Wednesdays, and you eat pizza and hang out with your friends. But one part of me that never felt right is I was always questioning everything. How is this real? Tell me how we got here. I don't know about this. And another piece that was always hard was a little bit of the shame piece that can come with organized religion. So feeling guilty about having sex, feeling guilty about drinking, feeling guilty about experimenting. And so I kind of faded away from the church. And that's when I found a little bit of drugs, alcohol, not much. I wasn't that crazy of a kid. I think my parents overreacted just a bit, but I was experimenting. And it was around my senior year that I started to, probably prior to that, I started really struggling with depression. But my I was asking my mom about this, of like when she started to notice that I was getting anxious and like having anxiety. And she's like, oh, pretty much like right off the bat when you were born.
Wow.
Wow.
And so like, she was like, you've just always been anxious. I used to like cry when my parents would go for a walk. I used to like think we were always lost because we were using Maps Quest then, and if we got off the Maps Quest, it was the end of the world. Like I was just always so anxious. And so struggled with anxiety, struggled with depression, struggled with self-harm, and my parents just did not know what to do with me. So at that time, my dad was also sober from alcohol because he struggled with his addiction. I was really lucky that he got sober kind of in my high school years, and it was pretty quick. Like he had an addiction, he got sober and got treatment, which is amazing. Very lucky. And my dad freaked out, my mom freaked out, and they sent me to rehab when I was 17 years old. And
based on what behaviors?
Being a teenager is what I would say the behaviors were. I feel like I didn't tell that story very linearly.
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 Ooh, that's a hard word.
That is. I'm not even going to try.
Yeah. But they sent me to treatment, and it was amazing. I had a blast.
You did?
Really? I think this is the first time I've heard somebody say
Yeah.
that.
I mean, again, coming from a privileged background, they were able to send me to a very nice place. And they were like, yeah, you're really depressed. And yeah. And I was like, yeah, I am.
Is that the first time like you ever went to therapy or?
I went to therapy right before.
Okay.
And I was bombarded with my text messages that I went with my dad, and they read all my text messages to me.
Oh.
Which, if you're a teenager in high school, don't read your kid's phone.
Yeah.
Don't do it. And at that point, they sent me to treatment, and I had a good time. But I actually turned 18 in rehab, and I was really confused because everyone there was kind of alluding that I had a drinking problem. And it was that point that I started to be like, maybe I do have a drinking problem. Like, yeah, I liked to drink when I drank. And people always talk about, oh, the first time that I drank, I knew game over. Like, it was amazing. And I was like, yeah, like I felt that totally. And so I went on being like, okay, my genetics tell me I could be an alcoholic. Maybe I am. And I'll just kind of be sober right now and see what happens. And then my parents told me that I would be going to sober living in Lubbock, Texas.
Wow.
Yeah. So I went straight into sober living and kind of knew from that point, once I met some other people, that I wasn't really an alcoholic. I was like, I relate to like the feelings of suffering. I relate to the feelings of desperation. I relate to the pain points of how addiction has impacted me. But I think that was just how depression had impacted me, and how anxiety had impacted me, and how I lived in a world that I didn't quite know how to fit into, which I think is something we all struggle with.
Yeah.
Like, you can be given a lot and still not know what to do.
Yeah.
And at that point, I stayed sober all through college. I was in the Center of Addiction and Recovery at Texas Tech, and which is a phenomenal program for anyone who is looking to have the college experience but not drink, because there's not a lot to do in Texas Tech other than drink. And if you like football, maybe watch football games. So
the whole campus wasn't sober, but
No.
you were part of
a program.
You were part of a program for
Yeah.
sober.
And that was really, really cool. I met some of the best friends of my life. I had great experiences. I learned a lot. I got to participate in like research studies around addiction. I got to get a really good education. Overall, it was like a pretty positive experience for a bunch of alcoholics being in a room together. So it was pretty fun. You know, you lose people that go in and out of the rooms, but overall, I enjoyed that experience. But boy, was I ready to leave.
Yeah.
And it was that point in time that I was like, I'm not an alcoholic.
Did you talk to anyone about these feelings, or did you feel like you had to fully subscribe to this narrative of being sober and being an alcoholic and an addict to fit in?
I felt like in the early years, like, I really didn't know. Like,
Yeah.
I had all these patterns of, like, struggling with eating behaviors, struggling with self-harm, struggling with depression, anxiety, boys. Like, I had all these things that I felt like I did abuse and use. So when I was in those rooms, like, I understood. Like, I was like, I do get it to an extent. And I started, like, really fixating on it once I started doing the steps, which in the recovery steps, you walk through, you admit you have addiction, blah, 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 blah. And I think I ended up telling first my friends, but then I ended up telling my sponsor that I didn't quite fit in. And she had me go through the book and, like, highlight lines that I related to. But she was kind of the first person that was like, okay, maybe you're not. Like, what do you want to do with that? Like, do you want to just sit in it and get through college? Do you want to, like, try and drink? What do you want to do? And I think I was too scared to drink because I had so much good going on in my life that I didn't want to lose. Like, I had friends. I knew that, like, my mental health wasn't awesome. So, like, I knew that being sober was not a bad idea. So I kind of stuck with it, but there was a part of me that was really fearful of that, like, coming out. It wasn't until I was going to study abroad with the sober community that I actually went in and told the director, because I was like, I just want to make sure this feels right. And he was really, really kind about it. I mean, he was just like, do what you think feels right. I never think being sober is a bad idea. And I was like, agreed. And I only had a year left, and, like, my values really aligned with, like, my family. And I was just like, it's just not gonna hurt to, like, do it. But I think once I left college, that's when there was definitely, like, a little bit of an identity crisis, because I never had that community again.
Like, ever since then?
Maybe a little bit later. Like, now I feel like I have a community and I have people who are spiritual and think about things a little differently, like the recovery community. But it definitely, losing that was hard, I would say, because I'm not an alcoholic.
And there's, you have a unique story, so I'd imagine there's not a bunch of people out there in recovery from the recovery world, right?
I think there might be.
Yeah, well, yes, there might be, but it doesn't sound like they're gathering to talk about their experience, perhaps.
We're certainly not gathering.
Yeah.
And that's been really cool. I've actually worked with a lot of sober teenagers who have, like, kind of questioned their identity in that, which some of them are, I would say, are probably alcoholics, but some of them are not. And I think being in such a black and white frame of thinking can really feel dangerous for kids, for young adults. Like, I know so many people that got sober at 14. And it's like, how do you know yet? How do you know?
Do you think that's a useful identity? I am an alcoholic. Is that useful for some people?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think some people, there's probably 1,000 ways to take that identity, but I think for a lot of people, that's the connection piece that recovery brings, which is really, really cool. But I think it also, AA is very much like, if don't drink, don't do drugs, there's no in between.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, they can't drink, but maybe they can do something else. I think no one can really use pain pills or heroin
Yeah.
normally. And those substances are addicted for your body. Like, you don't have choice there. But I think a lot of people fluctuate in and out of alcohol abuse or drug abuse, and that doesn't qualify them. And I've seen people that qualify as alcoholics, and it's a whole nother ball game, I would say.
One thing that we talked about before we hit record was this idea of black or white thinking and how dangerous it can be in all aspects of life and the world and mental health. So will you talk more about black or white thinking and how you see that present in the clients that you work with and in your own life?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we could probably have years of podcasts on black and white thinking and how dangerous that's been to our community and our society and our politics and our country. Like, the black and white thinking is so dangerous. I see a lot of it, of course, in my more teenage clients. A lot of them are in this identity piece, which I can throw back to when I was struggling with my identity in high school, which is what you're supposed to be struggling with. Newsflash. And just that they will choose labels, or they will choose something to grab onto because it brings them into a community, which is beautiful. Community is the best thing ever. But when you haven't given yourself time to actually explore, play around, you choose these boxes to put yourself in, and then it feels like you're stuck in them. Like, and to come out of those boxes feels really hard or scary or difficult or like you can't. And that is almost more isolating than having an identity in a community.
Totally.
Well, and I'm hearing you say, and I think we could apply this to so many aspects of our society, that if I choose a side, if I choose a box, if I choose an identity, then I'm immediately connected to a group of people who are similar to me or support me or just automatically accept me. So you could talk about that in your political views, your religious views. There's so many multiple identities that we could say that about. And then now I have access to people. I have access to community, which I desperately need because I'm human, and that's a very healthy and normal yearning and need. And we aren't, as humans, binary, black and white, one or the other, this or that, right? We're so complex. There's so much gray. There's so much in between. So the struggle is on how do you have the freedom to explore, find out, be in between. And I've been hearing you say that, being in the in between, which I think is such a great phrase.
Yeah.
And do we really get to do that culturally?
Yeah, it's such a good point because I just think of like all the identities we wear and like all the accomplishments, right? And how it's so black or white, like finish school, get the job, do like you're always in pursuit of like checking the box, right? And
get married, have a baby.
Yes.
And if you don't know if you want that, it ruins you. And then you feel isolated and alone.
Ironically, because you were just trying to get that connection that might have been baked in to some other societies or other ways of being, but because and both of you chime in and tell me how you think about this. I think of particularly American society right now super isolating. We don't have built-in or baked-in connections to others beyond the internet, and we're sort of breaking down this fabric of community and connection and groups and belonging. And so if that's not baked in, then you're gonna go out and seek that. Yeah.
And of course, like I see this with the teens so much is because that's what you're searching for is community and identity and who you are outside of your family. And sometimes that's escapism too. So then you start leading to groups that you feel like accept you.
Do you think, how do you think about identity and seeking it? Like, how much is too much seeking it? What happens if you're always in pursuit of this identity?
Oof. Ugh.
You don't have to answer it.
No, it's just such a loaded question because I think we're always evolving.
Yeah.
And when we seek an identity, and whatever that is, I'm a therapist. I'm going to make my life being a therapist. Therefore, I'm going to become more educated, more spiritual, more whatever I need to do to be the best therapist. Then I forgot about all the other aspects of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as humans, we just get really, really caught up in trying to fill in the resume or whatever we have going on.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm curious how many identities we can hold for ourselves and how many we can hold for other people. So I personally am a therapist. I'm also a musician. I also have this new found interest in the visual arts, and I have multiple identities that often even seem in conflict. And I'm curious, sometimes I have trouble holding all those identities because I feel like I need to be one or the other,
Right.
or people can't tolerate seeing me in so many facets.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, can I hold that? And then can other people hold that for me?
Yeah.
Which I bet they probably can better than I assume. But that's something I've been thinking a lot about. You're this or that. You're this or that. You're this or that.
100%.
So what do I do with that? How do I show up in that? If I'm many, many things.
Yeah. I feel like I am just in the sit with it all now kind of stage in life. Like, I don't really want to wear any more hats.
Yeah.
Like, I feel pretty satisfied with where I'm at. And despite having a lot of identities, I don't think they're that important.
Yeah.
Is that
Mhm.
crazy? Is
No.
that weird?
Mm-mm.
That's kind
Not
of
at
what
all.
I was getting at, right? Because I think about my clients that I work with that really struggle with this work, and I think it's important to know who you are and your values and what excites you and the type of person that you are, and but giving yourself permission to find that out and still explore other things. Like, there's this attachment to, like, I need to know my identity before I do anything else. And I think it can paralyze people. So
Totally.
I don't think that's crazy at all. I think it's like you're at this phase of, like, living and integrating.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And I do feel like you bringing up values, that's where the shift happened to me, is when I identified my values, which are like the things that are most important to who I am and my being. I feel like it did kind of calm the search that I've been on since I was a child. Like, it really did kind of pause the unending, like,
Pursuit.
of who am I? What do I need to be good at?
Yeah. That's such a good point. Like, how do we shift it from who am I? What do I need to be good at? What label? What box? Versus, like, what values do I bring into everything I do?
Yeah.
Right?
How do you show up? Like, how do you bring all of yourself into a room and just not need to be either the best XYZ or identified in a certain way? And I think that can be hard in a culture that does want us to be in certain boxes and certain things. And before we hit record, we're talking about capitalism and how capitalism plays into all of this. And if you're not the best therapist, in my case, therapist, musician, artist, podcaster, woman, person, well, then I'm going to keep spending money to be the best at those things because, again, I'm seeking community and I'm seeking connection and I'm seeking approval. So I think ultimately it benefits a capitalist society to keep people black and white, either or, keep them in these boxes, make them feel like they have to be the best. So they'll keep spending.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm tired of it.
Yeah, it's fucking exhausting.
It was either finding my values or it was being really, really sleepy all the time. I feel like that's what did it in for me. But now it's, you asked the question at the beginning, of course, who are you? Tell us about yourself. And it's like, oh, let me tell you my story instead of letting me tell you 3 facts, because it can't be wrapped up into 3 facts. I can't be, and no one can be.
Yeah.
Or letters after your name, or
Yeah.
what you do for work.
100%.
The question of what do you do is I mean, obviously complex and
Yeah.
difficult to ask somebody, what do you do? And because we're hyper focused on that culturally, then we don't walk into a room and say, who are you? Tell me more about how you show up in the world.
What are your spider senses, red flags, inklings when a client is working with you about anything and you go in your mind like, I need to work with this person on building values? Like, how do you know if you need to like do some values work?
I think most people, I'm like, we got to kind of start around values because I feel like it is like the essence of who we are. So I look for people that maybe are a little lost, like in a transition period or a time where they're like, I don't know what to do. Should I do this? Should I do that?
How do you define values?
I've stolen my definition from values from many places. But I always liked, like, this is my moral compass of life. Because I think everyone's moral compass is allowed to be different.
What?
Who would have thought? And so I think of it as my compass for how I want to show up in the world. Yeah. And so for me, it's empathy, it's compassion, it's
authenticity.
That was the word.
Those ones are right. Yeah, there's a lot of syllables.
Yeah, too many for this little girl. And humor is a big one for me. And I'm just like, if I just lead my life through those things, and of course it's not always easy. It's it's not. But if I do my best to lead my life with those things, I'll be where I want to be and I'll be who I want to be. And I can put my head on the pillow and be like, did the best I could. There we go.
What hard situations have you navigated in your life, like using your values?
Ooh, it's always boundaries. Doesn't it always come back to boundaries? Many things, of course. I think mostly what comes up for me right now is relationships. Right now, my dad has been back in his addiction, which has been really, really difficult. And so for me, what I'm always talking about with my therapist is like, how do I show up for this man who raised me, who loved me, who provided for me, who I cared deeply about, but also keep an arm's length away so his addiction does not get all enmeshed with me. And trial and error. I would not say I've been anywhere near perfect at that. I've really been through some pain points. But when I, talk to my dad about his addiction, I always think like, okay, one, I want to be authentic. Like, his addiction is harming me. There's no way around that. I also want to be compassionate, that I know his addiction is caused by a multitude of factors: depression, OCD, trauma, PTSD, all sorts of stuff is wrapped up in his addiction. And I know that. And so I have a lot of compassion for him. But I also I can't totally enmesh myself with trying to take care of him. And I've tried. I've tried so many treatment centers. I've tried to show up. I've tried to put him in detox, everything like that. And he has continued to choose / is addicted to drinking.
Struggling with, suffering from. Yeah. So one of the things we've been exploring is this concept that somehow families, loved ones of people who suffer with addiction, struggle with addiction, are just going to find some magical balance where they show up with the perfect amount of boundaries and the perfect amount of empathy, and they can just figure it out. And there's some magic line out there, or some book or some program that will help them show up perfectly.
Promises Malibu is our new sponsor of the podcast.
Doesn't work. I feel like I've read them all.
Yeah, I mean, can you speak, even as a therapist, working with clients, dealing with your own experience, just sort of the messiness, the gray, the in between, the not knowing. I mean, I'm assuming you don't always know how to show up or how to be in that relationship with your dad.
Oh, God, no. It's reading the room every single day. And there's a part of me that would love to be like, you know, tons of people would be like, just cut him off.
Yeah.
Just cut him off. Like, and I can't. Like, I've tried, and like, my heart and soul is not in that. So I know that doesn't work for me. But it does fluctuate day by day. Like, there are times where I choose to end the phone call. There are times where I choose to not fly down. There are times that I choose to really support him and make sure that he has food and shelter and all those things. But, you know, it is different for everyone. And a big part of me, like, I have family members who have just decided to, like, kind of cut him off. And that's really painful and isolating for me. But I, you know, my therapist looked at me and she's like, their values aren't the same as yours. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like, like, okay. I would say it took probably 3 months for me to work more through my anger and understanding of like, like, I can handle this, and it's probably because of the background I have, and some people can't, and they shouldn't if they can't.
And it's just making me think so much of, again, the theme here I'm hearing is the black or white thinking, and how much discomfort you have to hold when you do it differently, when you live a values aligned life. Like,
oh, man,
maybe it's easier for some people to cut their dad off, and for you it's not. Right? And it's being able to like hold that discomfort and be different than someone else. Maybe get feedback about it, and then be in that gray area versus cut him off, never talk to him, and be enmeshed.
And I think everyone is experiencing that gray. Like, if you're going against whatever box you put yourself in, or someone else has put you in, or you feel like you should be in, like, every time we kind of flow against that and go more gray, I think it's really lonely. It feels wrong because our society isn't set up for that at all.
No.
The multiplicity or the spectrum of experiences or values or identity. And I'm thinking, especially in this situation, the people who are saying I'm having really rigid boundaries with this person, or I'm cutting them off, or I just have to be fully in or fully out. My assumption is they're trying to avoid sitting with that pain. Right? They're trying to avoid sitting with, this sucks. I hate it. It makes me feel bad. And bad being the umbrella for angry, sad, disgusted, afraid, disappointed, rejected, you know. And so scared.
Oh, that's a hard one.
Is it?
I'm always scared.
Scared for him.
Scared for the next phone call. Scared for, you know, what's gonna happen next. But that fear, it really makes you want to go black and white in your thinking.
Totally.
For sure.
And I think the black or white is societal and it's a protection, because I'm even thinking, like, on the flip, I'm totally in my mind changing the subject, but people that have no boundaries at all, like clients that date the guy forever and break up, and all the duds and all the mean guys that treat them like shit. It's like avoiding being alone, avoiding hard conversations, right? Like, how much that black or white when it comes to boundaries is rooted in avoiding the discomfort that I think we feel if we're in relationship with anyone, if it's our dad, if it's whoever, you know?
Oh my God, totally. Yeah. I think that's always the hardest stance as a therapist, is to let people figure that out and encourage them to feel their feelings, which is, I guess, probably what we all spend a lot of times in our session doing, is like, what does that feel like? Rather than giving answers or, you know, telling someone what to do. Because I can tell you, dump her, dump him, dump them. But if you're not ready, that's not my advice to give yet. And watching them avoid, watching people be black and white in their thinking, I think is a hard one to pull people from.
Well, and how much of our time is spent working with people's avoidance of their pain? You know, the ways
All
that
of
they're
Yeah.
the ways that they're avoiding. I mean, there's times when
20
you're
hours a
actually,
week.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's times
Same.
when you're actually, sometimes you're sitting with clients and you're holding pain and they're willing to feel it. And a lot of times you're working with clients and saying, you're avoiding, or you're like this pattern of avoidance or dissociation or disconnection from life
Yeah.
or numbing out is really hurting you and it's not really getting you what you want.
Yeah.
Totally. I talk about that all the time with them, and I'm like, you don't have to do anything about it. Like, you don't have to go home and change your whole life, but like, you do have to start to acknowledge what you are avoiding and why, and like at least being with the pain in yourself. You don't have to go disrupt your whole life. I think you being with the pain, sometimes they do, but you being with the pain and like letting yourself in that gray area, that discomfort, a lot of times is like the only thing we can do.
Yeah. And I think about, everyone that comes into therapy is never like, I'd like to see my life get a little better.
Yeah.
It's always, well, maybe they say that, but usually it's a crisis, right?
Yeah.
We're walking into, I'm not okay right now. I am so depressed. I'm so anxious. And like, yeah, that avoidance of pain tends to cause more pain to a point where you're in crisis and you're seeking help, which is great. But imagine a world where we like learn to sit with our emotions at a younger age, and that was able to teach us how to make decisions that are more valuable in our lives.
Like, what would that world look like? How would the parenting be? How would the schools be? Like, what would it be like to have that world?
Ooh, dream world. I don't have kids, so I always am like, I don't have kids. I know it's not this easy. Like, I can offer advice, I can say things, but when it comes down to it, like, I'm getting my sleep at night and I have one mouth to feed, and that is my own. So,
fair disclaimer, all of us childless women, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But what I would love is like a world where we sit with our kids in pain rather than trying to soothe it and say, oh, here's a toy, here's a distraction, or, here's some food, here's like anything to get that to stop. Really teaching them that pain is normal.
Yeah.
Of course, we don't always want to be in pain, but pain is normal, suffering is normal, and this is going to be tolerable if you're not sitting alone in it. And like you have a hand to hold. Like, take away the kid's toy for sure. Like, punishment needs to happen, but could we sit with them a little bit longer in that period where they're crying after or they're upset after, and say, it's okay to be angry, it's okay to be mad at me, it's okay. And can we tolerate it? Can we sit in it? And I think right now we're in a world with so many lovely distractions. And I would never share my screen time. I'm embarrassed. I am fully using these distractions as well. But we, especially children, are always going to seek that pleasure source. And teens and adults, like, we're always going to seek pleasure over suffering. And I don't mean suffering in like the worst kind of suffering. I just mean like pain, fear, scared, terror, all that sadness. Like, if we just continue to avoid that, it escalates. And that's when we start to get into addiction. That's when we start to get into, eating disorders, self-harm. Like, things start to not work because they don't work.
Yeah. And I'm kind of curious around this concept of learning that uncomfortable feelings are also unsafe.
Yeah.
That if I'm anxious or sad or angry, that I'm also unsafe, and that I think that can get wired into the system. And we know that from research about trauma and all these different experiences, that sometimes our system truly believes I'm not safe to feel angry.
Yeah.
Right. And so instead of feeling angry, I'm going to numb or use any of these distractions. Right. Yeah. And I think one of our challenges in a very distracting, oversaturated, overwhelming world is to start to teach ourselves it's safe for me to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's safe for me to feel emotions that we tend to call negative,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that I'm physically safe. I can sit here. I can do this. I can handle it. I can move through it.
Yeah.
Instead of the millions of things we do to avoid,
Mhm.
disregard, numb out, and then the feeling's still there, and we're doing these.
Right.
We're engaging in these behaviors, right?
Yeah. And that's such the cool part about being a therapist is you
Mm.
get to teach someone, wow, we can feel pain together
Mm.
and you're not alone.
Mhm.
Like we are so self-centered as humans
Yeah.
that we forget that like everyone is in pain at times.
Yeah.
Everyone is suffering in some shape or form.
Mm.
Probably. I'm sure there's someone
Yeah.
enlightened out there that maybe is not. But most people are always feeling some sort of pain
Yeah.
in the background.
And it's so interesting, like, even thinking about you saying that, like, how our culture, and I do this, like, I'm fully guilty of this. Someone says, oh, this hard thing happened. Well, let me know what I can do. How can, you know, and it's just like this do, fix, get out of.
Yeah. Oh my God. The amount of times people have like asked me, what can I do to help you with your dad?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, unless you're going over there and being his caretaker,
Yeah.
which I don't recommend. Like, I just need people to know
Yeah.
that I'm not okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that if I say something or something comes out wrong or I'm cussing in traffic or whatever, like I'm not being tolerant, like
Yeah.
maybe it's a bad day.
Yeah.
And yeah, I might need to talk or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to have people in your life that you can just say, I just need to be able to show up however I show up, you know, good, bad, ugly, high, low, anywhere.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's nice.
It's such an amazing feeling. I feel like that's something, I mean, I can, with the two of you and so many other relationships, I feel so lucky to have cultivated relationships where you can just show up. However, and like no one judges you or tries to get you out of it or solutions you. Like that to me is such a gift.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Because you know that person can also tolerate some
Yeah.
discomfort, right? If they can sit with you in your discomfort.
Yeah.
It is a gift and it's rare, I think.
Yeah.
And cultivating those friendships, I think, is really important for
Yeah.
people. Yeah. So, in light of all of these topics that we're talking about, I know that you two met when you were both working at the Eating Recovery Center.
Got it. You're doing great.
Thank you.
Authenticity. Gotta say that real quick out loud. Just to let me know that myself now I can say it.
So, in light of all these conversations, and knowing that you two met at the Eating Recovery Center, I'm gonna leave it in this time. This is the second time I've said it. I don't think I'm gonna get it right. Eating Recovery
Center.
You could always say eating disorder hospital
Yeah.
too, so you don't have to throw them out.
Yeah.
We're just gonna leave all this in. You guys met at an eating recovery hospital.
Yeah.
Where you were doing inpatient treatment and you were therapists. How does the world of eating disorders, body image, our relationship to bodies and food, how does all of that fit into this conversation about black and white thinking, either or, identity? I know that's kind of a big question.
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
Take it away, Audrey.
What I have seen the most is that you are bypassing a basic human function in order to either escape or control something. And that is powerful. Like, I've never seen, I don't know, I've seen some pretty bad alcohol addictions, but eating disorders are a world of a difference. And proving how hard it is to be a human. So mainly what I would say is, you know, the escapism of feeling your feelings and being in your body. The more I'm in this field, the more I am drawn to like somatic types of therapy, yoga, things that really bring you inward, because everything else, I feel like, in our world brings us out of our body. And I want a world where I feel safe in my body, and I don't constantly run from emotions. And I do feel like things like yoga, like body image work, all of those things really help with that. But I would say, like, by far the most painful work that I do is that body image work, because having a body is hard in our society. It's very, very difficult. And it's usually tied to so much trauma and experience.
Did you mean the work you do with your clients or the work you do personally, or both?
Personally, probably, but also with clients too. I would say, you know, that piece is hard for me personally. It's beautiful to do with clients, and you watch it click. I've seen like total type A controlling personalities move to being like so flexible, just being able to flow, go with the flow, live their lives, and not be controlled by what they're consuming, how much they're consuming, or how their body is feeling in that moment. And that's pretty freaking cool work.
Yeah.
But I would say it's pretty painful to bring someone whose whole identity has been escaping from that into it.
And it's intensive work, you know, and you know how those clients come, they're like, I just like you to fix my self-esteem and make me love my body. And you're like, okay, well, shit, we're in for it, you know, like this is going to take a minute. Because
I got bad news.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like you got your work cut out for you, because you've got your personal trauma and your hereditary trauma, and now you've got to move through the society that's going to continue to tell you that there's something wrong with you at every angle in your body, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, we can be in community and humor and pain about that all together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think you're right. It is this outward focus. And I think it's this sense of like, I mean, I saw it back then when we worked there, and, you know, throughout my time being a therapist in my own life, there were times when I struggled a lot of, I'm safe, I'm good, I'm okay if I eat 1,000 calories. I'm safe, I'm okay, I'm good if I work out 5 times a week. I'm safe, I'm okay, I'm good if I fit into a certain size. I mean, even me, I have the knowing, all this work, and I'm like, I'm not looking at a wedding dress until I lose weight. And I know how insane that is, but it is so ingrained in us.
Oh, yeah. And society beats it into us at every scroll. No. At every turn. You are not good enough as you are. Yeah. Every product, everything you buy, every food, like, feels like it's either bad or good for me, and it's never just fuel for my body. Like, it's always something, and I can't live like that. Like, it's so exhausting, and I certainly do live like that sometimes, and have horrible body image days. And that's why I love, like, the health at every size approach. I use that a lot in my practice, and I also love, like, body neutrality as an approach, because it just takes the body away from being important. Like, why is this sack of skin so important to who I am? It has nothing to do with my values. It has nothing to do with holding my humor or my authenticity or my compassion. Like, it's just a vehicle.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's hard. And one of the things we talked about collectively, the three of us have a lot of knowledge. We're all licensed therapists, and we all thought and know a lot about body positivity and neutrality, and work with a lot of clients around this. And I have a lot of my values are in line with those movements, and I still have really bad days, and I still have days where I don't believe that I am thin enough or beautiful enough or young enough.
Absolutely.
So I think part of the journey around getting out of that sort of rigid black and white thinking is even allowing ourselves the space to say, yeah, these are my values. These are the things I care about and believe in. And I'm totally living outside of my values on some days when I wake up and I'm like, these pants don't fit. And therefore, spiral, whatever thoughts I'm having about my body and my worth. And I think I think there's a little bit of that conversation in those movements, but I think it's important to note, like,
it's not tomorrow, oh, I believe in this, so therefore I am it. Like I know everything. I sit around and talk to my clients about it all day. I listen to all the podcasts, and I still have days where I'm like, oh, I wonder if I work out, if I'll like get smaller. Like, God, yeah, we're human, and our lives are set up to tell us everything wrong with us at all times.
And I think what the healing is not to normalize not ever having those thoughts.
Yeah.
But like not engaging with them. Like we all have the thoughts, but like my ass is still gonna go look for a wedding dress.
Yeah.
You are still gonna be fine if you don't work out. You're like, right? Like it's about recognizing like we're gonna have the thoughts, just like we have the thought the sky is blue. But that doesn't mean we act on that thought. You know?
And those thoughts are always going to exist within every sphere, like whether it's body image or it's like, I want to punch my boyfriend in the face, or I want to run my car through traffic. Like those, even the suicidal ones, even the really dark ones are allowed to exist without action being taken upon them.
Yeah.
Well, and then that feeds back into this idea of I can have those uncomfortable thoughts and just still exist, right? And I can sit with those and be with them. What metaphors do you use as therapists? I always use with my clients, oh, your thoughts are just a train. You don't have to jump on the train. Or I use the cloud, but they're just clouds passing by, or the river. I feel like there's a lot of good ones you can talk about with your life.
Oh my God, I always struggle with that one. I'm like, it's like this box. And like, you're just looking at the box. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. It's a hard one to grasp on. I like the train. I might steal that from you.
Please do. Yeah.
I think it goes back to this idea because what is the number one quality that society backs up? You're smart, you're thinking, you're rational, you can think things through. And it's like, well, so many people are over identifying with their thoughts. I mean, and I'm so glad you talked about this topic today, because in my practice, the most dangerous thing I see is an over identification with thoughts, specifically like black or white thinking. Like that over identifying, that like it kills people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it brings people into their diagnosis.
Yeah.
Is where my head went. Like it brings people, oh, I'm depressed, therefore like you almost lean into your depression or you almost lean into your addiction. Like those thoughts, if you can't see around them and just let them be, they win.
And I always tell my clients, you have thousands of thoughts a day, right?
So
many. I mean, I think they've done studies about the thousands of thoughts that cross over your brain, and some of those are bound to be just full of shit, And so, if you're in that space where you're believing every thought you have, that I think is that dangerous space of every thought I have must be true because I thought it, or it came across my brain, therefore it is. Or I feel this way, I'm having these thoughts and I'm feeling these things, so they must be true.
100%.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes.
Which we all do. I'm not saying I don't do that. I'm just saying that's tricky, and that's part of the practice of being able to look at your thoughts and also not having things need to be boxed up. Or either or this certain way, being able to sit in the discomfort and the gray and the not knowing and the in between, as you talked about.
Yeah. I'm loving the in between right now.
Yeah.
Hanging out
you must be
there
really good at that. Yeah.
Nope. No. I try really hard. Yeah. But
Well, it sounds like the anchor to make the in-between maybe like 1% more comfortable, and not saying that it's going to be sexy or cool, is to know and live according to your values. Like that's what I'm taking away from this conversation, is the thing that can make that really hard influx gray area a little bit more tolerable is knowing your values and living with them.
Yeah.
So what would you say if someone's listening to this and like this is clicking and making a lot of sense, what's the first thing they can do to start to get curious about their values and how they can explore that?
Well, first, if you have a therapist, talk to them about it. And if you don't have one, go get one. No, just kidding.
Just kidding, not kidding.
It's, I always recommend doing like, you can buy, of course, like a Brene Brown book and do some exploring in values. I think she talks about it a lot. But also, I look up like journaling questions online, like as cheesy as that is, Googling like values questions and doing a little bit of journaling and soul searching. Yeah. I play a little game with my clients of laying out hundreds of cards,
value
cards with words like compassion, love, security, family, friends, like all the good words, and have them run through it. And that's fun, but I would say, you can do that with a sheet of paper. You can do that journaling. You can do that, going for a hike and meditating a little bit. Whatever floats your boat. I think it's pretty easy to identify once you start playing. Yeah. I've never had anyone like really be like, oh, I can't figure it out. It's always like, I have too many. How do I narrow it down? More than anything.
Yeah. And we can link, Brene Brown actually has a list. We can link to in the show notes. And I think her activity is you narrow it down to 20 and then 10 or 5 or something to that effect, so that you can then learn to live by your top values. And interestingly, if you really explore, a lot of us are way out of alignment with our values and the way that we live and spend our time and engage with others and how we think. So, getting really in tune with values, I think, can be a massive game changer for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. Should we wrap it up?
Yeah. Audrey, where can people find you if they want to work with you, if they want to see what you're up to? What's the best place to find you?
So Origin Wellness is our practice's name, so originwellness.com. We also have an Instagram about any upcoming groups, things like that. Kaylee is always running some really cool psychedelic therapy groups. If anyone's interested in that, that'll really get you into your body and kind of bring some good stuff out. But overall, that's where you can find me. Psychology Today, all the classic little therapist websites. I'm on. Audrey Bristol LCSW.
Awesome, Audrey. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and having this great conversation with us. Really thought-provoking and interesting.
So fun.
Great to talk to you. Yeah.
Thank you all so much.
We'll have to have you back.
I'd love to.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Are We Happy Yet? A podcast brought to you by Green Roof Studios. This episode was produced, recorded, and edited by Jane Thatcher Hahn and Hannah Buzzo. All original music was written and recorded by the Jane Thatcher Band. For more information about the show, or to get in touch with us, please visit our website at www.arewehappyyetpodcast.com. Thanks for joining. See you next time.
What's the
Sherpay?
What's that? Yeah, I'm thinking of Anchorman. When I can't remember.
I was in High School Musical just then.
Oh, yeah. Wait, what year were you born?
1994.
You're younger than me?
Okay.
Oh my god.
Okay.
I did that.
How old are you?
Chair.
I'm 93.
I'm 83, bitches.